All right.
Okay, well, welcome. I'm going to introduce our two speakers for today, Dina and Obi. Dina Salisi is a holistic healer with certifications as a trauma-informed and national board health and wellness coach, Bach Foundation registered practitioner and educator, and certified hypnotherapist. She is the author of several books and oracle decks, most recently Spiritwood Oracle, 40 Cards for Inner Reflection, and transcending sexual trauma, self-awareness tools, and nature-based practices to cultivate inner healing. Her work reflects the symbiotic connection with nature as a universal source of healing. She lives in California, where she finds endless inspiration in the magic of the landscape and continual guidance from the wisdom of our more than human family. And we also have Obi Kaufman. And Obi is the award-winning author of several best-selling books on California's ecology. His well-known book, The California Field Atlas, recontextualized popular ideas about California's more than human world. And The State of Fire, Why California Burns, and is one of his most popular and timely books to date. Through his work as a naturalist, author, and illustrator, he explores the dynamic story of how to more fully engage with the natural world. So welcome, Obi and Tina.
Hey, thanks, Brenna. Thank you for
Thank you,
that.
Brandon.
Yeah. And today we're talking about Spiritwood Oracle, which you guys both collabed on. And Dina, I was hoping you could get us started and just tell us a little bit about the inspiration for how Spiritwood Oracle came to you.
Yeah, well, it's funny because my dog Koa, who was with me the day the inspiration came to me, is like doing this weird thing where she's running around the room and making a weird sound. And that's the sound she was making the day of our encounter with Coyote. So this is really funny. So yeah, the inspiration came to me one day in Griffith Park in Los Angeles. And I was committed to living in LA for 4 years, kind of, I don't want to say against my will, but against what my, comfort zone is. And so we lived near Griffith Park, which is just a beautiful sanctuary right in the middle of the city. And every day at 4 o'clock, I would hike up the trail because that was sort of my grounding. That was how I was going to make it through living in LA. And one day in particular, we had three dogs with us and only two leashes. Okay. Because it's this bird trail that is kind of fenced off and nobody ever goes on it. So you can let the dogs run. Well, one day, Coyote steps into the path, and I write the story in the book. Um, and I've had experiences with Coyote in my life. In fact, living in Northern California, Coyote actually got my beloved cat, Tara. Yeah, and that was really intense for me, and that was many, many years ago. And I didn't hold a grudge. I really trust in Coyote's presence and what it was there, sort of to show us. So, right away, I didn't want the dogs and Coyote to play. So I just sort of looked around and I picked up this really big stick. And it was a tree branch and it was bigger than me. It was like 6 feet tall. And right away, not only did I feel like at ease, like I was able to sort of commandeer the situation, but it also felt very ancient. Like right away, I was just in tune with the land, in tune with Coyote, in tune with the pups. And, the rest is kind of history. I mean, Coyote did not bother the pups. Although what ended up happening is that they walked ahead of us on the trail. And what I realized is that they were leading the pack, right? And, I don't know if they would have done anything or not had I not had the stick, but I used the stick. And I was like hitting it on tree stumps and kind of like staking it into the ground and kind of showing them like who they were messing with, and for protection, right? And then when I got home, I wrote a whole piece about it. And, living in LA, I mean, it's such a crazy metropolis, and it also holds this ancient energy, what I call like this Jurassic energy, right? I mean, the dinosaurs were there, the La Brea tar pits. And I mean, it's just this place that's full of this ancient wisdom, although it's been sort of converted into this modern, Hollywood, right? Hollywood. So I wrote this piece about Coyote, and what I started noticing, and this was me just moving to LA, I started noticing stick everywhere. And the working title of the deck was "Stick is My Power," which is actually a song that I wrote. Um, and what I started noticing was all of the modern objects that we use that come from this ancient source, which is wood, right? And how we as humans have to work within the source to find strength, to find comfort, to find whatever it is we need to find, but we have to work with it, right? Like it wasn't like I wanted to have a gun and shoot coyote that day. In fact, I don't know that that would have worked. It was more like what I had to do. I knew what I had to do. And so that was the inspiration. And then I kind of ran with it, you know, and yeah, that was sort of the birth of it was in.
Mhm. Yeah, very like lived experience with the city and the wild nature that exists there. And so how did Obi come to do the gorgeous artwork for this deck?
I mean, everybody loves Obi's artwork.
Yeah.
That was sort of a no-brainer, and I am a big fan of Obi's. And I had talked with a couple of other artists who were supposed to do it. The woman Audrey Violet, who did my Listening to Flowers deck, and then another woman whom I was talking to, and it just wasn't, yeah, it wasn't working. And then I think one day Obi and I were having sort of a casual conversation, and I was like, "Oh, I want to pull you into this," and then I rolled it out to him and he accepted. And it was perfect because I think whenever I work with visual artists, which I've done for really decades now, I've worked with various artists, I always want to give them the seed, but I don't want to like direct them because I'm not the visual artist, right? So I think like the only word I used was ethereal. Like they have to be ethereal images. And we're going to split it up. We're going to do 20 trees and 20 tools, right? And so I just kind of gave him the list and then, yeah, then he did it.
Yeah. And so Obi, what was your response to getting asked and how do you resonate with Spiritwood Oracle?
Well, I really like hanging out with Dina. Her garden in the Napa Valley is just one of my favorite places on the planet.
Mm.
He has a magnetic energy towards all manner of pollinators and angiosperms, all the flowering plants, and I am drawn to that landscape. It's intrinsic to the core of my being. And interacting with, celebrating, and making the case for the continued defense of arboreal diversity and habitat spaces across California is a big oeuvre of my daily practice, and to be able to celebrate tree diversity in this spirit wood deck was one of these dream projects.
Mhm.
Um, if you'll notice the cards themselves, every single one is um, uh, details the particular morphology of individual tree species, but also there is this inlaid motif that is this lens component that zeroes in on either the flower or pollinating catkin or other part of uh, botanical anatomy that is called out to that particular species. So the celebration of the uh, inherent specialness of each tree form was really a joy to explore, and
Mm.
then to uh, uh, interface with this figurative work, which is the 20 tools that Dina was talking about, which is uh, uh, a different sort of way of interacting with the larger uh, concept that I suppose you could say is nature, uh, especially with the most ancient, I suppose, of all of the artifacts that our species makes, these tool objects that we interact with in our fingertips. So we got this metaphor for a larger intelligence at work, this cybernetic network of living systems and energies uh, that informs an interdependence really of different intelligences not only between different species, animal and non-animal in this case, uh, but also intelligences in different places of the human physiology. You know, surgeons often talk about things like having brains in your hands, or you know, Buddhist monks will talk about seeing with your feet as you are walking. So subverting um, norms of empirical understanding is sort of uh, an implicit function of something like a deck at all, a deck of cards. Unlike a book, the deck can be randomized and uh, and doesn't flow any particular narrative, which lends itself also to this greater landscape of meaning that these cards transmit. And I was just so pleased then to collaborate with Dina, my art and her words, her visionary language, and organizational skills to line that all up and knock them down.
Were there any trees, Obi, that you like weren't as familiar with, or were all of them like friends? Because I know you have really close connection with California native plants and, other things that you've spent a lot of time with. And so I was wondering, were there any that you kind of were getting to know through the process of the work itself?
Well, they're getting to know plants. It's on two different levels, right? There is the plant species, which is lives in this world of like identification, and then there's this there's an intimate knowledge of the plant individual, which is, you know, the particular tree that one might have a connection with, or the particular plant body itself that means so much more than ash tree or maple tree. There's specific frequency that lives inside of personal narrative, you know. So a lot of these trees that I depict, I don't have near me, living in the San Francisco Bay Area, but um, um, you know that there's I suppose the point here is that getting to know a tree is different than getting to know trees. And the botanical language is oftentimes obfuscated by personal narrative, memory, connection, and meaning. So I suppose the answer to your question is both yes and no.
How very non-dualist of you. Um, but important, I mean, important things to consider, definitely. It's like saying, do you have a relationship with humans or do you have a relationship with an individual human? Um, okay.
Yeah, it's, you know, and I don't mean to digress too much, but I think that there's an interesting idea of like plant time versus animal time, and
Mhm.
how trees represent a deeper connection to older evolutionary pathways when you consider um, the evolution of the gymnosperm, for example, over the past 400 million years. We've got the oldest example of um, terrestrial reproduction that requires no pollinator, and has been very successful across multiple mass extinctions, um, and continues to be the primary way of organism reproduction on the planet, biological reproduction on the planet for these large botanical energies, and tapping into that ancientness, that sort of original seed, is a grounding meditation that I think Dina's work provides for best. That sort of that meditation on the ancient powers and the ancient voices that shine through in something like the Spiritwood deck.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that leads pretty well into the next question I have for you, Dina, which is like, what is spirit wood?
Yeah. So I think, jumping off of what Obi just said, it's really this ancient source, this ancient connection, and it's alive within each of us, should we choose it to be. And I mean, I know this for a fact because I'm a woodland creature. Like I love the woodland space. And so whenever I go out into the woods, right away I'm enveloped in this source that is so much greater than me. When we talk about a higher being, a higher power, I mean, this is it, right? And so it's funny because I didn't name it Spiritwood really until about a couple of weeks before it went to print. And it was after I had seen all of the paintings, because then it was like, oh yeah, these are spirits, and this is wood, and this is tree, and it's this enchanted realm. And so then when I was writing the little intro, I changed it to a story, like a little like a fable, a story that we could enter into, because I wanted people, the readers, to be able to just go into this place. And as Obi just said, in this meditative way. Because for me, like honestly, yeah, being in the woods, being in nature, it has saved my life. I mean, and I think it has really for most of us. We just maybe don't know it. And so a huge part of my work is bringing people into this awareness and just like kind of like go out and be in your source, even if you live in cities. Find that source that speaks to you, because that's how you're going to create a foundation for well-being. I mean, above and beyond anything else. And I wholeheartedly agree. I believe in that. Excuse me. And so Spiritwood is this place that I'm inviting people to enter into and then discover the messages. It's an oracle deck, and it's funny because I don't see myself as like a seer or an oracle reader. It's more that, I'm an empowerment guide. So I'm here to help people, mostly I work with women, but people to grow. And so there's tools. We need tools, right? So the oracle deck is a tool, is one such tool. And I want everybody to make their own meaning from it. But more importantly, I really want to inspire people and encourage people to go out and find their own little area that is Spiritwood.
I have a cat that has their own ideas about what to do with this time. Yeah, I think I love that, like an empowerment guide. I think that is very accurate, and I think this deck can be used in that way. What are your hopes for this deck? I mean, kind of speaking to that, like what would you hope people to experience?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I just said, I think I really just want everyone to really ground into their piece of nature, their part in it, and not see themselves as separate from it. So at best, if that can kind of draw people into this greater idea of we are one with this universal source. And
Mhm.
it's not only here to provide us with like, tools. I mean, that's one thing we're highlighting, not tools, but that we're there to kind of give our love and our recognition to them. I don't even want to say it, to they, so that the mutual thriving can continue, right?
Mhm.
And I feel like that's a big part of what's lost right now. I'm hearing it spoken about as re-enchantment with nature, which is ridiculous to think that we could have ever gotten disenchanted. But if you look at like the kids coming up today, and even some of my adult friends, like people are like afraid to go into the woods, or afraid, mountain lions or this or that. But it's like, no, I feel like the more that you accept that you're part of this greater sphere, then the less scary it becomes and the less likely we are to do harm, right? So that's the big thing. That's the big ecological, deep
Mhm.
ecology, they're calling it, I think. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
Like
it's kind of
your
like the way
Obi's to that, the deep.
your worlds sort of collide, right? Is
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
through this lens of ecology and, like stewardship for the land that you bring Obi. And, of course, you share those things too, Dina, but you also, are primarily like a healer, transformer, creative in that sense. And so I love the union that those two views bring through this deck. I'm curious, like, if you want to speak a bit more to the distinction between the tools and the trees, like how that happened or why you think that's important.
Well, okay, so remember the impetus was stick. That to me that's important because it wasn't about like, oh, these trees are so great because I think I already have a love affair with tree. I mean, I do. It's all the ones I come in contact with. I want to know them better. I want to see them through different seasons and what they're like. Like I want to know what they're like, not what they can do for me. But then the stick, right? So the stick was the tool. And like we can think of like a branch as like probably, if not the, one of the most ancient tools. And it can be, and wood. And so then there's the element of wood, which is a malleable element. I mean, oh, the deck itself is made from wood, right? Paper is made from wood. So everywhere we look, wood is supporting us. And so I think like I want it to highlight that through the trees, but then I also want it, so it's like stick is the bridge between the tree and the tool, right? So then the tools are, and then again, the tools I chose were ones that I felt were most ancient. Like because it's funny in my original list I put lumber, and then I guess Obi didn't check the new list, and he did a lumber one, which so I have the outtake of the lumber card. But I didn't want to go that route. I didn't want to go with like the modern, we're building houses. I wanted to go with more like basket, which like, yeah, like what a great stick basket is. I mean, so yeah, so I really kind of, and like ruler, like maybe ruler's a little more modern, but it's a straight edge, right? And I think humans have been using straight edges. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of the differentiation there.
Hmm. I'm curious what you guys, if you have your own experiences in nature. We've been talking about like the power of nature to like find, this meditative place, this ancientness, this relationship. Do either of you have experiences or stories? I mean, Dina, you shared your stick story, but other stories of connecting with trees and or tools in nature that have been transformative or part of your creative process.
I mean, always and ever since. When I was 18, I was reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And I was doing this I would drive up to the Watchung Reservation. I grew up in New Jersey. And I learned, not until recently, I learned that the Watchung Reservation, it was the original land of the Lenape people. And it is the largest land that what's the word I'm looking for? The largest preserved land in New Jersey. And it's 2,000 acres. Obi, what's the biggest land preserve in California? I think it's Anza-Borrego. How big is it? It's huge.
Well, Death Valley National Park is 3 million acres.
Okay, there you go. So
Wow.
this is the place I was drawn to as an 18-year-old reading the Tibetan Book of the Dead. So I would go up there and literally sit under oak trees and read
Mm,
it, and that was my salvation. I mean, I had a pretty hard upbringing, and this was a time in my life when, like, I was doing really, drugs from the time I was like 16 to 18. Yeah, I almost
mhm,
dropped out of high school, and this was like my saving grace. I took the Buddhist book, I went up and sat with a tree, and my life was changed. So
mhm.
ever since, and I've been, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
a gateway experience. Yeah. What about you, Obi? Are there any experiences that stand out to you in your life with tree energy particularly, or nature in general? I'm sure you have many, but
Yeah, indeed. If I could tell a story, I suppose, about fire and its relationship to tree on the land, given that my most recent book was State of Fire. And I think that it's an interesting bridge true too, also, Dina, I suppose. It's a little bit off theme, but fire being a bridge between stick and tree as well. Um, as a ecological entity that has been used as a tool for thousands on thousands of years across the California floristic province to shape the landscape. And over the past 150 years, since fire exclusion policy has become the norm across the state, has become institutionalized. Fire exclusion, fire suppression, fire um, banishment. The trees themselves, the forest itself, has gotten sick. Uh, the especially with unprecedented rates of tree mortality in the southern Sierra Nevada, where you have overcrowded forests, drought stressed, riddled with fungal disease and insect plague. Um, the vectors of stress upon the ecosystem that are regularly managed by normalized fire regime returns, a system that has been completely deformed uh, under uh, colonizing policies of and this attempt to turn what California is into some sort of facsimile of maybe like a European landscape, uh, where so many academic traditions of forestry were originally understood under the Western academia, um, where fire, even to this day, fire as a sort of popularized narrative is certainly a tale of destruction and tragedy, when in fact it is a partner towards a potentially healthy ecosystem representing a covenant, if you will, between um, people and their land, as if there was any distinction at all. Uh, we could go into the exact nature of the covenant, but I think I'd like to turn it back around to what the Spiritwood Oracle deck represents, which is this lexicon really of different um, interfaces, or manifestations, if you will, of how this technology works, how this covenant works between um, trees, individuals, communities, their diversity, and in innovative technologies of anthropogenic origin. Um, and if if we can celebrate that pathway into recognizing, at least disarming, this idea that Richard Powers in his book Overstory calls plant blindness, this idea that the forest is this green impenetrable wall of biological matter that cannot be apprehended, cannot be analyzed and synthesized into one's own being, that a tree is just a tree is a tree. If we could begin to break that down, I think that there is a road there to remaking that covenant between the people and the land, that seems so lost in so much modern ideology of what consumerist carbon-based economies might be. So any amount of meditation uh, towards the study of what and how valuable diversity is in the habitat space, in the ecological mind, I think is a worthwhile creative investment, and I'm very proud to be a part of it and partnered with Dina because of it.
Yeah. Thank you, Obi. And I want to say we do include fire in the deck because we have firewood and we have match, right?
Oh yeah,
And then
yeah,
I
yeah.
love what Obi outlines in his fire. Well, what you've said even before you wrote the fire book was that in California, trees are made of fire, right? They're made of fire. They're meant to burn. And we just had a couple of weeks ago, we just had 8,000 acres up 5 miles from my house burnt up in the hills. And, it was like 6,000 acres in like a day. It burned. And luckily it didn't burn any structures. No one got hurt. It was the land that burned. And I was talking with someone about it. And I hadn't ever spoken with this person before. It was like at the dry cleaner. And it was funny because right away in the 5 minutes we spoke, we really quickly got to this is what the land is supposed to be doing. It's just that we're not supposed to be crowding it, with houses and stuff. So Yeah, so I mean, I think I think it is changing, Obi, like you said, I think the thought around it is changing, partly because of your work and, these other people who are really, we're not fighting. We shouldn't be fighting fire, right?
Mhm. I
Well,
mean, to save a life,
not
sure.
fair, yeah.
Um, yeah, and I just want to say, that like the indigenous people of California like have had this wisdom, from the beginning of time because they maintained this relationship and this covenant that you were talking about. And, through our desperation in having these, mega fires, I mean, finally, I think some of the systems that be are starting to collab with some of the indigenous tribes. I know the Chumash are working with the fire department in Santa Barbara. So there's hope of reestablishing this relationship, I hope. Um, yeah, I definitely hear a lot about reciprocity, and I think that's really important. All right, so I think that's all I have. Do either of you have anything that you feel like you want to say before we close with the card pool? Pull. No? Okay, Dina, would you do us the honor of pulling a card from the Oracle deck for us?
Beautiful, it's Tree Eye Oracle, Spiritwood Oracle. And it comes with a beautiful little booklet. But yeah, let's pull a card for the collective right now.
Mm.
And I think everybody's pretty used to pulling cards these days, at least people who are watching this.
Mhm.
I'm just going to shuffle. Oak. Like, I know I mean, I don't want to say it's basic, but we're looking at oak right there. So let me look at that. It's so beautiful, and you can see the acorns. I was in the presence of some tan oak a couple of weekends ago, and I forgot how much I loved tan oak. And their caps are amazing. They're like little wild hair, like it's so beautiful. So the affirmation on the oak card is, I listen to my body and take time for replenishment. So oak is actually one of the trees that I am familiar with in the box system, right? So it's a great medicine for those of us who tend to overwork. Like when we think of the oak tree, like how much sustenance and life force is in the oak tree. I mean, it's food, it's housing, it's so powerful, right? And the thing about oak is what they'll stand mighty until they don't, right? Like we see this sudden oak death where then they just almost fall over. And so, yeah, so the message with oak is to actually take time for rest, especially if you're a busy person before lest you fall ill, right? And I had my very first Buddhist teacher when I was 18, Bill Price. He used to say, if you have something that you need to get done, give it to a busy person to do because they'll get it done, right? So oak, that reminds me of oak. Yeah.
Wow.
And in the guidebook, so the guidebook's really cool because look, I opened to firewood, but there's color images, and then I write, I write a little oracle, and then there's questions, and there's some keywords. So the keywords for oak are strength, knowledge, stamina. And I always give people reflective questions, and I don't have to read those, but that's part of my work as a healer. Again, it's not so much that like I want people to draw cards and be like, take it at face value. I always want to encourage people to go deeper, right?
Mhm.
So there's always awareness questions that are available. Yeah.
Mhm.
Opie, do you want to speak to oak at all? Is there anything that any wisdom
Um,
you have around oak?
well, I think most of what I would have to contribute is ecological or biological in nature. Genus Quercus. There's uh, many different species across California, and they all do different things. They all have different functions. They all have different habitat types. They all have different habitat spaces within inside of their body itself. They have different relationships with different mycelial networks. They have um, it's a whole panoply of functionality, um, and I think that contrasting different oak species is interesting as putting them all together and to find meaning as you describe it, which is fascinating, and I'm happy to participate in that kind of thought process as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, I love that we ended on oak, which connects to your story, Dina, about sitting under the oak tree when you were, a teen, and also connects to fire. I mean, that's one of our native trees in California that, do really benefit from fire. So on that note, I think we'll close. Thank you guys so much for letting me talk to you.
Thank you so much, Brenna. Thank you, Dina. Had a
Yeah.
great
Thank
talk.
you, Toby. And oops.